So today's session is about these techniques of questioning. It actually can be used by anyone, like counselors, therapists, hypnotherapists, even those who are doing alternative healing modalities. All those can easily use these techniques. Where to use these techniques? That's the thing now which I'm going to say. You can use these techniques during your what you call as interviewing, like after taking the intake and the consent form, making it fill from your clients, and after you receive them, looking at the data of the intake form, you can use these techniques in order to receive more information from the client when the client starts a session with you as per the appointment date. Okay, so that's the first usage during interview. Second usage is even in between the sessions. It's not like you will only be doing counseling, or you will only be doing therapy, or you will be only doing alternative healing modalities. You will of course be talking to the client every time when a session starts for at least 5 to 10 to 15 minutes in the beginning. We all need to talk before we start with any of the healing modalities. Okay, so even during that every session 5 to 15 minutes, you need what you call as ways of actually bridging the gap or building rapport with your client. Rapport meaning the client needs to feel comfortable. Many times what happens is you feel that as a therapist or as a healer, you feel that you are nervous because it's the first time you are having a client and you do not know how the client is. What if the client turns rude? What if the client doesn't like my therapy? What if the client actually finds my healing modalities to be quite illusionary or not so good? What if? Okay. The more you are actually scared of how the new client will be, the new client is double more scared of you. Do you know that? Why? Because they feel that you can see through them, you can know about them more. They feel that they'll be minutely observed, etc., etc., etc. So they are far more nervous than how we feel actually. So in order to ease them into the process so that they open up faster with you as a therapist or a healer, these questioning methods are important. Okay, and these are the basic techniques, meaning if you once understand these techniques, then you don't need to worry at all about or think hard, what should I ask next, what should I do next in a session. So that is the plus point of understanding these techniques. Okay, so let me go to the next slide now. Yeah, making the minimal verbal response. The lines and headlines are very big. Minimal verbal response meaning you are just listening to the client properly and you are not interrupting the person. Like if a client, like firstly you ask, I read your intake form, I read your checklist, or I read your information which you have put on the intake form. Would you like to share something more, or would you like to elaborate on certain things which you have already put in the form? And when the client starts talking, be quiet, listen to the client, use very less words like yeah, and if you feel that the client is still wanting to talk initially, okay, for 1 to 2 minutes, let the client talk. If the client feels like talking for 4 minutes, let the client talk. But if the client is talking beyond 5 minutes, it's time for you to then intervene. Why? Because then the client will just go into their detailed stories and go off track. And whereas the session has to be always on track. Okay, like you have to keep bringing the client on track. Many a times, even when you if you have observed yourself, when you start describing a problem or a situation, sometimes you start with one problem and you end up describing 5 different things. The same things happen with the client. So making the minimal verbal response is something which you need to do, okay? But ensure that you do not do it like half an hour you're sitting and listening to the client. Do not do that. Maximum 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes, one topic, okay? And that also only in the start and in between. So by doing this, you will ensure that the client feels heard, that somebody is listening to them, because you need to understand this. Most of the clients who come to you, okay, they are clients because they do not have people around them to attend to them, to make them feel important, to make them feel worthy. That is how they end up being clients, and that is the truth. So if they see that you are there, interested in their welfare, listening to them, really trying to understand them, by a minimal responses, nods, yes, oh, I understand, they feel valued, and then they will open up with you. So this is one technique. Next technique is called as clarification. Okay, clarification is like right now whatever I have explained. Okay, if a client has actually started talking about their life, okay, and somewhere you feel that let me actually ask the client, and this you can do actually 5-10 minutes or 15 minutes in between a session after a client has talked in a bulk. What is clarification is, you just ask the client, okay, so so far whatever you have said till now, so this is how I'm putting it, exact example, whatever you have said so far, you meant this, this. So just reflect back to the client, let the client know that I hope I have heard you correctly, and I hope I have understood you properly. So the client feels valued again. The client feels, yeah. I mean, yeah, what you're saying is right. There is one more advantage of clarification. Okay. And you must be thinking, what should I ask in clarification? It's the same example given to you here on the slide. If I hear you correctly, or in Hindi, if I say, अगर मैं मतलब आपने अब तक जो बोला है, आपने ये बोला है, right? That is how you actually clarify with the client. Okay, so the client feels heard, and if you think that or the client actually thinks that the what you have understood is not what the client said, then the client will add or delete your clarification. So then and there you come to know the truth of the matter, because many times what happens is, what the client is saying and what you are understanding can be 2 different things. So clarification helps in sorting that out. Okay, paraphrasing. Now, you know, paraphrasing, paragraph, we all know what a paragraph is. So what is paraphrasing? It is like you are, clarification is different, you are clarifying. Paraphrasing is whatever the client has said, and this is not done in first 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It could be done after 20 minutes or half an hour, or towards like in between the sessions, if your sessions are 1.5 hours or 2 hours. So paraphrasing is like whatever the client has said, apart from the content, okay, also focus on what feelings the client has said those things with. So now you are actually, after a client has revealed the entire story around a problem, you then tell a client, so what I understand is this, and you feel like this. And the main issue, that is the content, the main issue and the problem has been this, but you felt like this. So you are focusing on the content, the problem, and you're focusing on the feelings. So you are knowing now completely how the client thought, felt when the problem happened. So here you do not become a parrot. Understand that. Parrot meaning you shouldn't be repeating exactly what the client said right on client's face. You are supposed to bring your own words into it in explaining what the client said. Okay. Again, all these techniques you will find that it is all creating a state in a person that they are being valued, they are heard so much, and the healer or the therapist is trying to understand them. They are trying to see the depth of their problem. They are even trying to see what they feel. And that is exactly, you know, half of the healing happens when you use these techniques with anyone. Okay. So another one is paraphrasing. Next one is reflecting. Like, for example, I can reflect back right now. Dharna keeps looking on the left of her side. So there is some distraction over there, or there is something which is distracting her on that side. Or something or the other is going on in her mind. Like Payal is constantly looking at me. So I'm able to reflect on her face. One thing I can reflect on Payal's face is that she's thinking hard. She's thinking hard. Okay, I'm understanding, but seems difficult because of the words. Like reflecting is a huge word, but the concept seems easy. So it's not hard, but still, you know, Payal is at edge. So now what did I do is I'm reflecting back through the behaviors and facial expression of the person I'm talking to as to what they are feeling and thinking. Okay. Now what happens here is you are not supposed to reflect only in your head. Ask the client. Like I can give you an example. Yesterday itself, there was one client and I was just talking and talking and talking. Okay. After the client had talked, it was a sort of a technique I had used to, it'll come ahead, what technique I was using. It's called summarizing. So I was just summarizing what the client said in the past half an hour. And I was also giving my own opinions and everything. That is also one technique. It'll come. So all those things I was doing. And then there was something which I said, one or two statements, and the client's facial expression changed. And the client was a little serious. And it's as though, you know, when you have a shock, like this, taken aback, okay, shock state. So I saw that immediately while I was talking to the client. It was an online session. It's not even in person, but I am that observant. I stopped myself immediately there. And then I asked the client, there is something which bothered you right now. There is something which went inside. What happened? So this is how you're supposed to reflect back. You're supposed to observe their facial expressions and body. That is why as much as possible, when you're using these techniques, go on a video call, not on an audio call. On an audio call, although through their way of talking, pitch of talking, speed of talking, and even the word usage, you of course come to know a lot, but in-person video sessions, you come to know through their eye expressions, facial expressions, you come to know more. Okay. So as much as possible, if possible, do a video session always with clients. Okay. Yeah. So this is reflecting facial expressions, body language. Okay. Reflect back to the client. Wait, something happened here, right? Would you like to share? And then ask the client. So let the client explain. Or if you feel that you already know this seems to have happened, like I did with my client, that something struck you, something you're not feeling good right now. I asked the client like that. And the client said, yeah, actually, you know, I was thinking this. Then the client added. So I was right in my reflection. Okay. But many a times it might happen that what you're reflecting might be wrong or different than what the client is feeling. And it's perfectly fine. At least you now know that what the client was thinking and feeling by doing this technique. This is what I was saying. Probing. Probing in Hindi, if I use, चीजों को खोद खोद के जानकारी लेना. Okay. Probing is the first technique to be used because you people are always using an intake and a consent form. Okay. You are all working as professionals. So when you are using an intake and a consent form, you already have a lot of information with you. So you need to start any session with a probing technique. Probing is additional information. Example, I also use a checklist. So in the checklist, there is anxiety ticked, then there is shyness ticked, then there is other characteristics and traits ticked. Some people even write in detail, this is my problem and this started in this year, blah, blah, all those things they write. Okay. So just probe them. Like you mentioned that you feel anxious. So now in interview, could you explain when you felt anxious and how much your anxiety peaks? What happens when you are anxious? What happens to your body? What happens to your behaviors? What part of your life impacts when you are anxious? So you see, one checklist, one anxiety. How many questions I asked? So probe, dig into that one aspect. And then use which technique? Listening. The first technique I meant, minimal response technique. Wait and let the client speak. Okay. And if you feel that the client is not able to, speak, then just immediately do what, it is also one more technique. Tell the client, give a real life example where you felt anxious, maybe a recent one or a one you remember. So that clients usually remember, oh yeah, last time I felt anxious like this what happened. So you now know the intensity and also the most frequent reason why a client feels anxious and where a client is feeling anxious. Okay. So these informations then you can use in your sessions. Okay. Like in your therapy or in your healing modalities. So probing means asking for additional information. Okay. Effective probing is always non-judgmental. You have to understand that. Non-judgmental meaning what? So when a client is speaking something, actually, I felt anxious when I just give a random example. I felt anxious when my husband just suddenly said so-and-so statement. And you're like, what is there in that statement? I mean, it's such a normal statement. Why would anyone feel anxious about? Now, this is how you're thinking, for example. Okay. But this is a judgmentalistic thinking. You're not there as a healer to be judgmental. Because for that person, a husband speaking that statement is a trigger. It may not be a trigger for you. For example, a very random example came to my head. I'm afraid of lizards. My other friend is afraid of cockroaches. So whenever she says I'm afraid of cockroaches, I'm like, cockroaches, such a tiny thing. Okay. And I'm afraid of lizards. And she says lizards, they don't do anything. They just crawl on the wall. They don't do anything. So you see, it's like not understanding each other's fears and being judgmental. So while probing, be genuine, be empathetic, which is also one more technique. All these techniques are coming ahead, which I'm in between introducing, and I'll explain to you in detail. So good probing questions ask for elaboration and clarification, which we already learned, and repetition. Repetition meaning you can ask the client for more examples where the client felt anxious. If you feel that one example is not enough, ask the client, are there other kind of incidences or things which make you anxious, apart from the example you gave. So you can actually come across more things which make a client anxious. Okay, so probing is a very, very most important, and this is a technique you can use right from the start. So whenever you struggle as to, oh, it's a new client, I don't know what to do, probing. And you have the intake form with information. Probe on that, every aspect of it. Probe, make a question. Okay. Next is summarizing. Summarizing is just like the title, summary. Make a summary of everything the client has said and present it to the client. Summarization is done in the middle or towards the end of a session. Okay, there is not much to explain over here. You all know what summarize, so making a summary is. Okay, checking out. Many times what happens is what the client has said, okay, might confuse you, not because it is confusing what the client said, but it can happen that the client is saying something now, and just 2 minutes back the client said something opposite to it. So you are like, okay, client is feeling this and client feeling this, both. How is it possible? And both are opposites. So the client can't feel opposites for one situation. So what you do now, if you are as a healer confused, as a therapist confused, check it out. So ask the client, okay, just a while back you were saying this, and right now you express this. So which is more impacting you? Or is it that in particular situations you are like that and in other situations you are like that? So even when you are asking a client, ensure that your question shouldn't be judgmental. Like in Hindi, if I say, 2 minutes pehle to aapne kuch aur bola tha, abhi kuch aur bol rahe ho. That is very judgmental. Like 2 minutes back you had said something and now you're saying something else. That is a very judging question. So do not, ensure that you respect the client and just try to check out. Okay, 2 minutes back you said this, now you're saying this. Are these two different situations you're talking about? If it is one situation, then which feeling is more heavy for you? Which is the most primary feeling for you? So this is like the client then thinks, oh yeah, I had actually said that, because many a times, when we are talking, we forget what we have talked before. And this is human tendency and nature. Okay. So check out confrontation. Now the word itself is like, oh my God, a healer and a therapist has to confront the client. But I'm telling you, I love this technique because, it's like I get basically as a therapist more compliments from clients for being so honest and genuine. Because I'm not confronting to insult a client. I'm confronting out of concern and they can see through it. So again, the words you use, the way in which you confront is also important. So honest feedback to the client. Like, for example, if you see that the client is denying certain things within, or the client is, you can see through the client, you know what the client is actually, but the client doesn't want to see that nature or that behavior or that wrong. So what do? You confront. How do you confront? You are like this. No, that is not what I'm talking. Okay, confrontation verbatim, how I do is, can I tell something honestly, or can I say something here? Because this is how I'm feeling about you. So you can start lightly like that and then speak. That, you know what, I feel that what you said is this, but although I feel this is not the case, I think this is the case. And leave it for the client to think. Do not expect the client to immediately say, yeah, maybe you're right. No, leave the client to think. Maybe after the session, the client will think. But your duty is to be genuine. And your duty is as a healer to give honest feedback to the person. So confrontation is a very effective technique, especially clients who deny, what is happening. And in today's world, ego has been the number one problem of many people. And ego is the number one problem because everyone is trying to show that they are very beautiful human beings, they are highly spiritual beings, they are very good at heart, whereas their deeds or their actions do not match that. Okay, so that is where sometimes, especially even with people with such high egos, confrontation has to be used. So be ready as a healer and a therapist to get a little bit of fire from the client. Sometimes you will see that the clients have not liked what you said, but your role is not to be the topmost likable healer. You are not there to get a prize as a healer number one, as a therapist number one. You are there to heal people. You are there to make people aware of themselves, build more insight into themselves. You are not there to get any kind of status, prize money, or anything, or reward. So use this technique and ensure that it shouldn't be like disrespectful. It should be like with genuinely, genuinely I want to say this is what has been happening. I'm pretty sure that especially over here with both of you, I've been using this technique more often. You have realized that I speak very openly, right on face. So that is how even with my usual relationships, not just clients, usual relationships, I use this technique. It's always good to use it, because if you're using it with others, that means you are allowing to even use it with yourself. Because even you need confrontations from time to time, a self-talk confrontation. Okay. Next is self-disclosure. Self-disclosure is like you speak about your life. Where, example, if you feel that the client is feeling ashamed of something, and you just sense intuitively that there is something that the client is holding back, something that the client is not revealing. There is something missing. Why is the client not saying everything? And you have that hunch, you have that intuition. Then what do? You just start sharing an incident about your life where it impacted you, it affected you, and how you got out of it. Okay. So you self-disclose. Like for many a times what happens is when it's a couples therapy, right? I often use me and my husband's incidences. Like, this is what happened and this is how confused he was, etc., etc., etc. Or this is how sometimes I can give you a recent example right now, what I said as a disclosure. Like, for example, I had said that my husband is a non-communicator, meaning he doesn't easily express his feelings. So for him, communication means if you're communicating for more than 2 minutes, for him, that is like conflict or an argument or something like that. Whereas it's communication. It's a serious communication, but it's a communication. There is no raised voices. There is no abusing each other, but it is talking about a point and seriously. So beyond 2 minutes, he feels that, oh, now it's an argument. So for him, talking beyond 2 minutes seriously about one thing is an argument. So you see, this self-disclosure I made, and then automatically the client in front of me said, yes, exactly. This is what happens with my partner. So, self-disclosure allows the client also to feel that you are not an angel or a robot. You are a human being and you are a healer, you're a therapist. You also go through struggles. You also have such challenges in your life. So then they open up more. Okay. But ensure in 1 hour, 45 minutes or 30 minutes or all events cannot be about self-disclosure. Then your focus is not the client, but you. Then the client is actually the therapist and you are the client. So ensure you do not overdo it. Okay. And then self-disclosure Many times it will happen that the problem when you're self-disclosing, you're focusing on the person and the situation. Okay, always. So it shouldn't be done more, because then the focus is you're telling the client, oh, client, it's not your fault. It's the situation. It's the people around you. No. Self-responsibility is the number one thing and the trait to be inculcated in a client. So do not overdo self-disclosure also, because there are chances then the focus becomes another event or the person, due to which a client is feeling in this manner. Okay, so that is self-disclosure. 10th one is information giving. Just like the title, you are providing information, but this information giving is not from some what you call as it's like, for example, celebrity magazine. Not from there. This information given is from health, proper health resources, proper health books, proper health Google articles, or something which you have learned through, like in India, you have learned through your granthas, your Upanishads, your Vedas, or all kinds of alternative healing modalities, whatever factual information which you have, give that to the client. Okay, like I can give you one more example here. More examples are coming for couples therapy only. This is something which I have observed also, and this is something which you can put it out factually also, and it's there in the research also, that women are more talkative and emotionally expressive, mostly majority, than males. So what happens is, often in a marriage, a woman always craves for a man's attention. How? Communication. They want their husbands or their partners to have a conversation with them. They love that, women talking. But men do not like that, mostly. And this is also research proven. They are not so expressive. They are not so talkative about their feelings. They are more talkative about practical things at home and aspects about life. Okay, so they are naturally built like that, while women are more on the emotional end. Now, this is a factual information. It's not just my thought. It is backed by several researchers. So information giving should be factual, not your own mindset. Okay, so that you can keep giving to the client in between the session. Empathy. We all know the word itself, what empathy is. Okay, it's like when the client has talked, saying things like, I absolutely understand what you're going through. This is a statement where you're empathizing with your client. I know how it feels to lose someone. For example, if a client has lost some family member, I immediately, of course, remember my mother and say, or if the client has actually lost a mother, I immediately reflect back to the client and empathize with her. I totally understand, because in 2016, I lost my mother. So empathy also creates a situation where you immediately form that bond with your client. And empathy also is something which can be used in the beginning of the session itself. Okay, so right from the start, like probing, empathy can be used throughout the session. Next is immediacy. Be in the moment of the client. If a healer or a counselor changes the past and the future tense, it may speed or slow down the counseling process. Be in the moment. I'll give you an example. The client is talking about the present. There is an incident which happened, etc., etc. Okay, you are listening. Then you ask the client, okay, you feel this right now. Then you tell the client, oh, okay, in the past, that incident happened and you had felt that. Okay. And then you again bring the client to the present and say that, So if you felt that in the past and now you're feeling this, so that means you have changed through the process. And if you're feeling this now, what would you like to work upon? What you are doing is you are confusing the client also. Because if the client is talking about a present event, that means for the client, the present event is more important and where help is needed. So then you shouldn't be going back into a past event while the client is actually focusing on the present event. Focus then on the present event and work around it. And if you feel that the past event needs to be worked upon, first complete the present event work. And then mention to the client towards the end, you had that day actually shared about one more event in the past, which is similar to this, but you had reacted differently, you felt differently, and it traumatized you differently. Would you like to revisit that event? Talk about that event after you have completed the present event with the client. So ensure that you remain in present and in the moment with the client. Okay, you don't keep shifting. And sometimes it may also happen that the client keeps shifting in past, present, past, and sometimes go into the future also. So you have to bring back the client to by just asking one question: what would you like to work upon? Would you like to work on that event, or would you like to work on today's event or recent event, or would you like to work upon an event which you think might happen? What would you like to work upon? So what I did over here is clarification also I have used for this. So I've clarified with the client, what do you wish to work upon? Because the client's wishes and will is more important if work needs to go, okay, on properly. So this is the first part, okay? And because those parts didn't have ready-made questions, so I have brought certain ready-made questions. So this is like direct questions as examples. So even if you put this entire pamphlet in front of you, questions, okay, you're talking to the client, you're listening to the client, and then you are just looking at that list of questions, you'll find one or two questions 100% which you can ask the client. Okay, so initially you might need a guideline, so that is the guideline I'm bringing you. So if you keep this list in front of you, you don't need to think, oh, what did she say? Clarification. Should I use clarification now or probing now? Or should I be using reflecting now? Understand one thing. The easiest way for you to actually dig deeper and make the client feel comfortable is look at the client, listen to the client, look at the facial expression. You will automatically know what is to be asked. But if you're too much focusing on what you need to do, then you are not focusing on the client. So the solution here is focus more on the client and not, okay, next, what should I do? Probing, reflecting, should I be more empathetic? Then the focus is you. You are not actually focusing on what the client is saying. Okay. So ensure that you focus on the client. That is how you have to go about. Take a 5-minute break now, quick, and come back. I'll just pause here for a minute. Okay. So we are back after a break. Now, as I was talking about purpose of Socratic questioning. So Socratic method is a very beautiful method of questioning, and it's the most potent and used technique during session to session by all therapists, counselors, healers, alternative healing modality person, everyone. This can be used. So now I'm going to directly give you like ready-made options of how this technique is used. Let me just bring it to a smaller slide and increase the slide because, okay, one sec. One moment. Okay. So conceptual clarification questions. Okay. If you see, I have already taught you about clarification. Okay. And here it is like giving examples. Here, what you are intending from clients is get them to think more about what exactly they are asking or thinking about. Prove the concepts behind their argument. Use basic, tell me more. Okay, so this is like probing as well. And questions which you can ask to make them go deeper into their own selves, into their client selves. These are the questions. So why do you think, example, so why do you think you're saying that? If a client says that, I'm very angry nowadays with my husband. Why are you saying that? Or what exactly do you mean when you get angry with your husband, this happens? Could you elaborate? Could you say more? So can you give me an example, real life example or general example? Even certain techniques, are you saying this or this? So you're also using clarification, you are using checking out. So at any cost, digging deeper into what the client is saying. So many times what happens is, we all have a habit of speaking in the air sort of thing. And I use the term in the air sort of thing because we just speak huge dialogues. For me, my life is so heavy. I just can't move along. Whenever I'm home, I'm with my in-laws, I feel very heavy. Ask the client, what kind of heaviness do you feel? What actually happens? Could you give me an example when you felt heavy last time? What do you mean by heavy? What happens to your body? What do you feel? So after client puts such strong dialogues, if you probe like this, if you ask these questions, many a times the client also starts feeling that, okay, my heavy feeling is this. Or the client feels that, oh, I have just stated a dialogue, but actually I don't feel that heavy. While explaining, the client realizes all these things. You understand? So many times what we throw out in the air, oh, my life is so difficult. Okay, how? What is the difficult aspect about your life? What are the things which makes your life difficult? So are you understanding the questions I'm asking? So these are ready-made questions. You can put it as it is when a client is saying certain heavy statements like that.
They will,
yeah,
they will expect solutions also.
they will expect solutions and you are not the answer. As I keep telling all of you again and again, you are not the answers. The solutions will come from the client themselves. And that is what you have to do. Now, probing assumptions. Okay. Do you know, and before I move to probing assumptions, all these techniques, do you know what it does? It actually brings a client to their own awareness and answers. Only questions. So you don't have to give them answers. You ask them questions. If the client says, okay, so what do you think is happening to me? Question. So far, whatever you said, what do you think is happening to you? Question back. Make the client think about their own selves. Okay. There are a lot of clients who all want answers only from others. And the best method is when a person finds answers from within themselves. Because no matter how good of a therapist or a healer you are, the answers which you have within you for the other person may not be 100% accurate. And even if you have the answers, you have the solution, and you say that to the other person, but the other person has not reached that solution or answer on their own, do you think they will act it out? They will follow it up on that solution? No, because they have not reached that answer on their own. Then how are they going to follow that path? That is why never become the answer for someone else. Okay. So yeah, probing assumptions. This is like probing assumptions, make them think about the presuppositions and unquestioned beliefs on which they are founding their argument. This is like shaking the bedrock and should get them really going. Meaning, I just gave you an example of how much when somebody says something and does something, we sit and assume. That, again, an example a client gives that, my mother said like this to me. And she said this because of this is this. Do not get caught in that statement. When a client says like this, ask the client, did your mother say this is what she meant? Did your mother say to you that when she said this, this is what she wanted you to understand? Then the client says, no, but this is how I feel. How much accurate is your feeling? What if your mother actually was saying this with a different reason? You do not know. So what you need to do is ask the client to go back and clarify with the mother. You said this. Did you mean this? Okay. So the client understands one thing over here. The client has been living a life on assuming that when the mother said these dialogues, this is what the mother meant. Don't live on assumptions. You have to probe assumptions as well. So what are the questions? Ready-made questions for it. Instead of asking these direct questions, you seem to be assuming. The way I put it, that this is your feeling. What your mother said, the mother said because of so and so reason. This is your feeling. This is what you think. But you do not know for sure 100% this is what she meant. Are you? So when you put such statements in front of the client will be like, yeah, actually, this is my thinking. I still do not know my mother's thoughts. So then the client will think of actually clarifying with the mother. Or at least the client will stop thinking the way the client has been thinking after that incident. Okay. So either or, you are helping the client be at a little bit more peace, because everything is going in the head of the client only. Okay. Many a times problems are here and not outside. So ensure you ask these questions, not so directly, but the way I put it. Okay. And if the client says that, yeah, actually later on, my mother actually said that this is why she said, and I was right. Then ask these further questions. So what do you think will happen if your mother has said this? Do you have options? Or do you agree or disagree with it? Okay. Is there something else which you need to find out? Okay. So all those things you can say. And please explain why or how do you think that your mother said this? Okay. And whatever your mother said, how is it actually affecting you? So you said that this is happening to me. So how is it affecting your real life? Then the client feels that, okay, my mother said this and my mother meant this, but actually my life is not getting affected in any way. Where is it getting affected? Here. Reality is the same. I'm living with my husband, nothing is happening. My mother said, and I'm getting affected here. My life is different in action. So why am I creating this constant stress in my head when it's actually not impacting my life? So then the client realizes, oh, I can just drop that thought. It's not important. Just drop it. So you see that the client comes to a solution on their own. Are you understanding now? This is how it happens. Then we have probing, rationale, reasons, and evidence. Again, this is another kind of probing. So all these are examples. the best way to actually ask a client is whenever the client says, I'm pretty sure that, again, the same example, when my mother said this is what she meant. Ask the client, do you have proof of it? Are you sure of it? This is what she meant. Is there an evidence? How can you be sure that this is what she was saying? So all these questions here, how do you know this, that this is what she was saying? Because you didn't ask your mother why she said what she said. This is you who are thinking. So how do you know what you are thinking is 100% accurate? So this is like reasoning with the client. And this is like asking the client, do you have concrete evidence? 100% sure? Are you 100% sure? So what happens here is then you're shaking the client to actually find the answers. Okay. And many a times the person is long gone. It may not be a mother. It might be just one guest who came and went and said something to you. So then the person cannot go and clarify, right? Or ask the guest, did you mean this? Okay. And this incident happened probably maybe a year back. So of course, after a year, you cannot ask the client to go and ask the guest, did you mean this? Okay. So every time you cannot have an action solution. So then ask the client, you do not have 100% evidence that that is what the guest meant. So why are you thinking that ways when you are not 100% sure? Leave it. Okay. Because the guest can be meaning 10 different things, but you have caught on to one meaning. And that one meaning is creating a disturbance for you. So what is the point of creating that disturbance to you? Okay. So again, all these statements are questions. Did you see? I have not said the client, drop your tension. Why are you thinking like that? I'm not saying the client direct advices. I'm giving questions. So I'm not saying the client, that's 1 year back incident. What are you doing with it? Leave it. No, I'm not giving advices. I'm giving questions to the client. Always ensure you use questions. And this is a very good technique even with real life relationships. Never be the answers. Ask questions. Okay. You will get the hang of these questions and the practice of it. Initially, you might irritate a person by your questions because the person is not used to. Person is like, huh? Suddenly she's asking me. I mean, for example, if a person says to you that, nowadays you have been very angry. Your partners have said that to you. Instead of defending yourself, no, why do you feel so? I don't think I'm angry. I do a lot of meditation. I do a lot of exercise, blah, blah, blah. You are there defending yourself. Instead of that, okay, what makes you think so? What made you think so? Give me an example. Then the person is like, oh, now I'm in the spotlight. I have to give her examples. Are you understanding now? So many a times these statements which people just fly around easily, when you actually probe them properly with rationale, with evidence, give me an evidence where you are saying that I get angry a lot. Give me evidence of it. The person fizzles out. There is no real evidence many a times. Or sometimes the evidence which the person gives is not suggestive of anger. For example, the person gives, that day you got so frustrated when this happened. So then you can say, okay, that this example of frustration, not talking about me being a very angry person. What else can you give as an example? And then if the person says, no, this where you got very angry, this happened and you got very angry. Okay. So then ask the person, according to you, why do you think I got angry? So ask the person, does the person understand the situation and what happened to you? So, you are again and again asking the question to that other person who is accusing you of something. So this probing, this rationale and evidence brings more clarity to the other person as well as you. So as a healer, you can actually ask these questions to the client. You can teach the client also this method to use it with their family members and friends. Okay, so that is why there are a lot of techniques where all these techniques will help the client to be more wiser and more realistic with their relationships. Okay, so apart from you learning this technique, teach it to the clients as well. Questioning viewpoints and perspectives. Ultimately, everything is a viewpoint and perspective. What you think is right, what I think is right, now who is right? For you, what you think is right. For me, what I think is right. Why do we need to debate and say, no, what you think is wrong, what I think is right? It's a matter of perspectives and viewpoints. And you need not always bring a person to an amicable solution. You need not always bring a person to agree to you. Then that is ego and rigidity. So questioning viewpoints and perspectives. Again, this can be used ready-made questions. Okay. So as you said, your mother said like this. Again, same example. Mother said like this. Okay. So whatever she said, and you assume that she said this because of this. So whatever she said, who benefits from what she said? Is there a benefit to anyone? Or what does it suggest? That she's better than you? Or what would you say more about it? If there was something else you wanted to think about what your mother said, what else would have been the reason why she said those things? So you are making a client think other viewpoints now about the same statements of the mother. So now, instead of the client actually thinking of only one viewpoint, oh, my mother is like this and she said this and she meant this, make the client think of she might have meant 5 different things. Then the client is like, yeah, she can actually have meant 5 different things. Why am I sticking to one? Because I still do not have evidence of what she meant actually. Okay, so these questions help in clarifying that it is all their viewpoints and perspectives. And a perspective can be not 1, 10 different perspectives of one thing. Like if I'm seeing this is a game actually. If I'm seeing a ball from one side, colorful ball, for me, I see the red color. For the person on that side, green. For that person, yellow. It's a matter of perspective, but we are seeing only one ball. Okay, that's the same thing. So here what I say, basically, it is just like a tip for you that if the perspective and viewpoints, everything is different. Okay, why do you want to hang on to a perspective which is disturbing you? Why can't you take a new perspective where you are feeling better, where you are feeling happy? For example, I'll give you, it is very hard actually, but you know, this is the best way of living, I would say. You know that actually a person usually likes insulting others. You know that this character is like that. One of your friends is like that. Okay. It's the basic nature of that person. Okay. You know that this friend, basic nature is being rude and insulting others. So this particular person now has insulted you. First thing, you expected her to be an angel to you. Why? She will behave exactly how she is. That's her nature. You knew it. Second thing, if she has said something insulting and she's in the habit of actually insulting people, you have 2 ways of thinking. She anyway insults people. But does that make her 100% accurate? Does that mean that whatever she's saying is the gospel truth? Does that mean that what she said is true to you? No, there is a perspective there now. It's up to you whether you want to take it as true or take it as a person who is anyway rude and insulting. Forget it. She will be like that only. So if you take the second perspective, as I said, she's like that only, she'll always be rude, do you think you will be that disturbed? But if you take this perspective, oh my god, today she insulted me and she said this to me, I'm very angry with her, I don't like when she does this. What else did you expect from her, to become a Dalai Lama? That suddenly she'll be meditating and giving you all kinds of saintly advice. Her basic nature is of insulting people and being rude. Why should she be different to you? Are you understanding? So it's a matter of viewpoint and perspective. You still have a choice of how you need to feel. So while I'm actually teaching you all this, similarly, by asking these questions, your clients are learning the same thing. And you can teach the clients these techniques, these questioning methods. Okay. So this is also like a teaching moment for you and your clients. Next is probe consequences and implications. Okay. So now the client knows that it's all in the head, whatever thoughts are happening, and the thoughts are disturbing the client. Okay. And the client is feeling that, no, it's so hard to let go. I cannot let go of these thoughts because these thoughts come again and again. Okay, if these thoughts come again and again, what do you think will happen eventually if you keep thinking this way? Your health will deteriorate, you will be in stress, you will be in tension. Consequence, what will be the consequence of your living your life in assumptions, viewpoints, and perspectives? It will be deterioration of your mental and physical health, right? So when you ask these questions, you'll always get clients answering to, yeah, actually, I need to work on my thoughts. So the focus becomes not the other person or the event, the client and the viewpoints and the thoughts and the behaviors. For example, a client says that, whenever I get very stressed, I just walk out. I don't like talking to a person. Okay. Is that the solution? We know that that's not the solution. You have to have a conversation. Okay. If you want to walk out, you can walk out and come back and resume the conversation with a little peace of mind. So if the client says, I don't want to talk then again on that topic, then ask the client, if you do not talk at all on the topic which has disturbed you a lot, and if you keep doing this, what do you think will happen? Will your relationship with your partner become stronger or weaker? What is the consequence? So these questions will bring the client back to practicality, reality, realistic ways of living. Okay. So these are the questions. So probe on consequences, end result. So asking the client, if you do keep continuing doing this, what do you think will happen? And if this will happen, will you like it? No. Who wants to deteriorate their mental health, physical health, and ruin their relationship? Nobody. Okay. So bring the client to a realization through these questions, through end results, consequences. Questioning about the question. Okay. Like, if you have asked a question to a client and the client is like, being too adamant or smart that, and feels like not answering your question. And if the client is just like sitting idle and just thinking, you can ask questions like, why do you think I asked this question to you? So it's like the client is like, okay, now not just one question. Now I also need to think, why did she ask this question? So let the client answer at least that. This is easier to answer. If a client is unable to answer your first question, okay, and is taking a long time, you can ask these questions then. Okay. So it's like a buffer in between the questioning method, because many a times we are not in connection with ourselves. We are not that aware and alert to everything about what we are thinking, what we are feeling. So for a buffer question, buffer meaning in between filling questions, these questions can be asked. Okay. Next is nothing. For any other questions you feel, you can ask me. If you feel that there is something which has, in between, something is missing in a conversation with the client, or if you feel that, you are stuck somewhere with the client, feel free to email me, feel free to message me and ask, okay, I'm stuck here. What do you think I should be doing? Because the client is like this. Feel free to ask. Okay. Anytime. And I know that the session was of 1.5 hours, but I also knew very well that it's going to finish faster. So now, I hope everything goes well for all of you.